"I choose you to be the father of my child," said the Apache woman to the poor cowboy. Wild West. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying the faint smell of wild sage and distant campfires. In this endless landscape, a young cowboy named Samuel rode his weary horse along a dusty trail. Samuel was poor, like many others eking out a living on the frontier. His clothes were worn, patched in places where the fabric had torn from long days of work, and his boots were caked with dust from countless miles of riding. Yet despite his hardships, there was a quiet dignity in the way he carried himself, a stubborn pride that refused to bow even in the face of struggle. Samuel had grown up in a small settlement on the edge of the frontier. His father had been a rancher, barely scraping by, and his mother had passed away when he was young. From an early age, Samuel had learned to rely on himself. He knew how to mend fences, tend to horses, and drive cattle across the harsh plains. Life had not been kind, but it had made him resilient, and he had learned that in the Wild West, a man's character mattered more than his possessions. As he rode, Samuel's thoughts wandered to the stories his father had once told him about the Apache people who lived nearby. Tales of bravery, honor, and survival had filled his childhood, painting a picture of a proud people who had defended their land for generations. But as the settlers moved west, these stories had become more complicated. Samuel knew that the Apache were wary of strangers, especially those who came too close to their territory. He respected that, even if it meant that he had to ride carefully and avoid conflict whenever possible. On this particular morning, Samuel was headed toward a remote cattle ranch that had hired him to help with a herd. The journey was long, and the plains stretched endlessly in every direction, dotted with rolling hills and sparse trees. The wind was sharp, carrying a chill that reminded him that spring was still young and the nights could be dangerously cold. As he rode, he noticed signs of life in the distance, a faint trail where someone had walked, hoofprints in the dirt and smoke curling gently from a distant fire. Something told him he was not alone, and he tightened his grip on the reins, alert but not afraid. Meanwhile, a short distance away, Nayeli, a young Apache woman, moved silently through the brush. She had grown up in the wilderness, learning to track, hunt, and survive in a world that was often hostile to her people. Her skin was sun-kissed, and her dark hair fell in long braids over her shoulders. Her eyes, sharp and observant, missed nothing, the movement of an animal, the shift of the wind, or the approach of a stranger. Nayeli was brave and independent, yet she carried a quiet sadness. The land she loved so deeply was changing, and she often worried about the future of her family and her people. Nayeli had heard stories about settlers riding too close to Apache land. She had been taught to be cautious, to trust her instincts, and to protect her home at all costs. So when she spotted Samuel from a distance, she paused, crouching low among the tall grass to observe him. There was something different about him. He moved carefully, with respect for the land rather than recklessness. His horse followed the trail without trampling the fragile plants, and he seemed more interested in the sky and the horizon than in conquering the land. Nayeli's curiosity was piqued. Perhaps he was not like the others. Samuel, unaware of Nayeli's presence, continued along the trail, humming softly to himself. There was a gentleness to him that few people noticed at first glance. He was strong, capable, and used to hard work, but he also had a kindness that showed in small gestures, feeding his horse carefully, taking the time to observe the landscape, and speaking softly when alone. Life on the frontier could harden a man, but Samuel had managed to remain compassionate, a trait that would serve him well in the days to come. As the hours passed, Samuel came to a narrow ravine where a small stream cut through the land. He guided his horse down carefully, keeping a watchful eye on the edges where the rocks could give way. He knew the dangers of the wild well enough to respect them, and his careful nature often kept him alive when others might have been careless. Water was scarce on the plains, and every stream was precious. Samuel led his horse to the edge of the stream, letting it drink before he quenched his own thirst. He knelt by the water, cupping his hands to drink and feeling the cool liquid soothe his dry throat. Nayeli watched from the edge of the ravine, hidden behind a clump of rocks. She admired the way Samuel handled his horse, the care in his movements, and the quiet confidence in his posture. Despite the differences between them, his world of settlers and her world of Apache traditions, there was a shared understanding of survival and respect for the land. It was an unspoken connection, one that neither of them could yet name but both felt deeply. After resting for a short while, Samuel mounted his horse again and continued along the trail. The sun climbed higher, and the heat of the day began to rise. Birds called overhead, and the wind carried the scent of distant wildflowers. Life on the plains was harsh, but it was also beautiful in a way that few outsiders could understand. Samuel had come to love the simplicity and the freedom of this life, even if it demanded constant work and vigilance. As the day wore on, Samuel noticed signs of recent movement, footprints in the dust and broken branches along the trail. He slowed his pace, alert and cautious. The plains were full of danger, from wild animals to outlaws, and he had learned never to take a single sound or shadow for granted. His instincts were sharp, honed by years of experience, and they told him that he was not alone. Nayeli, sensing that Samuel had noticed her presence, decided it was time to step forward. She revealed herself cautiously, making no sudden movements that might alarm him. Samuel's eyes widened slightly at the sight of her, but he did not panic. Instead, he studied her with curiosity and respect, recognizing that she was a person of strength and intelligence. Their eyes met, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them, a recognition that, despite the dangers and differences around them, they could see each other as individuals, not just as symbols of opposing worlds. For the rest of the afternoon, Samuel and Nayeli observed each other from a safe distance, neither daring to approach too closely. The air between them was tense but not hostile. There was curiosity, caution, and perhaps the first spark of something deeper, something that neither of them could yet name. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and purple, they both retreated to their respective paths, knowing that this encounter was only the beginning of a story that would change their lives forever. As night fell, Samuel made camp under a cluster of trees, building a small fire to keep warm. He ate a simple meal of beans and bread, thinking about the mysterious woman he had seen earlier. Who was she? Why had she been watching him so carefully? And why did he feel a strange sense of calm, even admiration at the thought of her? Across the plains, Nayeli returned to her home carrying similar thoughts. The meeting had left an impression on both of them, and neither could shake the feeling that their paths were destined to cross again. The stars filled the sky that night, endless and brilliant, shining over the plains and the small figures below. In this vast and often unforgiving land, two lives had begun to intersect in a way that neither could have predicted. Samuel, the poor cowboy, and Nayeli, the brave Apache woman, were strangers bound by circumstance, curiosity, and a quiet respect for one another. And though neither knew what the future held, the story of their meeting had already begun, setting the stage for challenges, choices, and a connection that would defy the harshness of the Wild West. Samuel's days on the plains were long and tiring, yet he found a strange comfort in the routine. The rhythm of riding, tending to the cattle, and sleeping under the stars was harsh, but it also gave him a sense of purpose. Every day brought challenges, storms that turned trails into mud, cattle that strayed into dangerous areas, and the constant need to find water for both horse and rider. Yet amidst the difficulties, his thoughts often returned to the mysterious Apache woman he had encountered near the ravine. He did not know her name, nor did he know if he would see her again, but the memory of her sharp, observant eyes stayed with him. For Nayeli, life continued with its own struggles. Her family relied on her for protection and guidance, and every day brought new reminders of how the world around them was changing. Settlers were moving further into Apache territory, bringing fences, cattle, and the ever-present threat of conflict. Nayeli had learned to read the land, to understand its rhythms, and to anticipate danger. But the sight of Samuel, the young cowboy who had treated the land with care rather than disrespect, lingered in her mind. He was different from the others, and while she could not yet understand why, she felt an unfamiliar sense of curiosity and cautious trust toward him. Weeks passed, and the harsh spring gave way to the warmth of early summer. Samuel was tasked with moving a herd of cattle across rolling plains to a distant settlement. The work was exhausting, and the trail was fraught with danger. Wolves roamed the area, and sometimes outlaw bands threatened to steal livestock or harm the men who guarded it. Samuel's small group was experienced, but even the most careful cowhands could not control the unpredictability of the wild. Yet Samuel handled the challenges with patience, guiding the cattle with skill and careful planning. One afternoon, as the sun reached its peak, Samuel noticed something unusual on the horizon. A small plume of smoke rose from the edge of the hills, too thin and quiet to be a normal campfire. Instinct told him to investigate, though he approached with caution. Drawing closer, he realized the fire was small and controlled, surrounded by carefully placed stones. And then he saw her, Naeli. She was standing near the fire, arranging small bundles of herbs and plants, her movements precise and deliberate. Samuel's heart quickened, but he dismounted slowly, making sure not to startle her. Naeli noticed him almost immediately. Her hand hovered near a small knife at her belt, not in aggression but as a precaution. "You again," she said, her voice steady but guarded. "Why are you here?" Samuel held up his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. "I saw your fire from the trail," he explained. "I did not mean to intrude. I only wanted to make sure it was safe for me to pass." Naeli studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly, weighing his words against her instincts. Finally, she nodded. "You may pass, but stay on the trail. Do not wander into the hills." That brief encounter sparked a cautious connection between them. Over the following days, they met in hidden spots along the plains, always careful to avoid the watchful eyes of others. Samuel shared stories of his childhood and the struggles of frontier life, while Naeli spoke of her family, her people, and the sacred land they protected. Their conversations were simple at first, filled with observations of the land, weather, and survival. But slowly they began to share more personal stories, fears, hopes, and dreams that neither had spoken aloud to anyone else. Despite the growing bond between them, tension always lingered. The settlers in the nearby towns were suspicious of anyone seen talking to the Apache, and some openly threatened cowboys who were caught interacting with the people of the land. Likewise, members of Naeli's community warned her against trusting outsiders, especially those associated with the settlers. Every meeting was a risk, and both Samuel and Naeli felt the weight of these dangers. Yet the connection they were forming was stronger than the fear. It was as if the land itself had brought them together, teaching them trust, patience, and respect. One day, while Samuel tended to the herd near a quiet stream, a group of settlers riding fast horses approached. They demanded to know why he had been seen near the Apache land. Samuel explained cautiously, choosing his words with care, but their faces were hard and unforgiving. "We don't trust anyone who talks to them," one of the men spat. "You're risking more than just yourself." Samuel tried to remain calm, but the encounter left him shaken. When he returned to the hidden meeting place that evening, Naeli was waiting, concern etched on her face. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Samuel shook his head. "No, but it's dangerous. They are watching closely now." Naeli's eyes darkened with worry. "We must be more careful. We cannot let anyone see us together." That night, Samuel and Naeli sat by a small fire, the stars above them shining brightly against the dark sky. They spoke quietly, aware that even the wind could carry sound. Samuel admired Naeli's strength and courage. She had grown up in a world that demanded resilience, and she had mastered it. Naeli, in turn, admired Samuel's honesty and humility. Despite his poverty and the harshness of his life, he treated her and her land with respect, a rare quality in the eyes of many outsiders. As the days passed, their friendship deepened. They began to rely on one another for more than conversation. Samuel learned skills from Naeli that helped him survive in the wild: how to track animals more efficiently, recognize edible plants, and read signs in the landscape that he had once overlooked. Naeli, in return, learned from Samuel about life among the settlers, how to anticipate their movements, understand their habits, and protect her family from encroachment. Together, they navigated the challenges of the plains, forming a partnership based on mutual respect and shared survival. However, life on the frontier was rarely simple. Rumors of a settler-Apache alliance began to spread in nearby towns. Some accused Samuel of breaking laws he had never intended to break, while others warned Naeli that her safety was at risk. They both understood that their growing closeness could not remain hidden forever, yet neither could bring themselves to stop meeting. Every glance, every conversation strengthened their bond, and the thought of separation was unbearable. One afternoon, while Samuel repaired a broken fence along the trail, Naeli approached quietly, her steps barely disturbing the dust. "I worry about you," she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of fear and affection. Samuel looked up from his work and smiled, a small, reassuring gesture. "I worry too," he admitted. "But I trust you, Naeli, I have to." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we must be careful together, and we must be ready for anything." Their hands brushed lightly as she passed him, a fleeting but meaningful touch that spoke volumes about their growing connection. As summer progressed, the land grew hotter and the days longer. The herd Samuel tended was moving steadily toward the settlement, but the ever-present dangers of the frontier loomed. Wolves, harsh weather, and the unpredictability of human nature made every day uncertain. Yet through it all, Samuel and Naeli found moments of peace and joy, laughing quietly when a calf wandered off, sharing stories under the stars, and learning to trust each other in ways neither had imagined possible. By the end of summer, the bond between them had become undeniable. They were no longer just cautious acquaintances sharing secret meetings. They were companions, relying on one another for safety, guidance, and emotional support. Both knew that the world around them was filled with danger and prejudice, but the trust and understanding they shared gave them hope. It was in this uncertain yet beautiful environment that the story of Samuel and Naeli began to grow, setting the stage for choices that would change their lives forever. The plains were harsh, the dangers real, and the future uncertain. But amidst it all, two lives had intertwined. Samuel, the poor cowboy, and Naeli, the brave Apache woman, had formed a bond that neither the settlers nor the shifting landscape could easily break. And though neither fully understood what lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain: they were stronger together than apart. The days grew longer and warmer as summer settled over the plains. The sun blazed high in the sky, and the wind carried the scent of dry grass and wildflowers. Samuel and Naeli had become accustomed to the rhythm of their secret meetings. Each time they met, the bond between them deepened, shaped by shared hardships, laughter, and quiet moments under the vast sky. Yet beneath the surface, both of them felt the weight of danger. The settlers were always nearby, and Naeli's community watched closely, wary of any interaction with outsiders. Still, neither could stay away from the connection that had grown between them. One morning, Naeli rose before the sun, her mind heavy with unease. She had felt strange for a few days, a mix of fatigue and tenderness that she could not explain. As she prepared food for her family, she noticed her thoughts drifting again and again to Samuel. The memories of his gentle eyes, the way he cared for his horse, and his quiet respect for the land lingered in her mind. She realized with a mixture of fear and wonder that her feelings had grown deeper than she had expected. She was no longer just cautious or curious. She felt something that startled her, a sense of love. Meanwhile, Samuel had his own worries. The herd he was guiding to a distant settlement had grown restless, and he had been forced to ride long hours in the scorching sun. He was tired, hungry, and aware that each day brought new risks, from wild animals, sudden storms, and the possibility of encountering hostile men who patrolled the plains. Yet, when he thought of Naeli, a wave of calm washed over him. She was a mystery he could not solve, but she made him feel understood in ways he had never felt before. Her presence, even in memory, gave him hope and courage to face the challenges of the frontier. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with brilliant shades of orange and pink, Samuel rode slowly toward their usual meeting spot. The plains were quiet, the wind soft, and the air heavy with the scent of wildflowers. When he arrived, he saw Naeli standing near a small grove of trees, her silhouette outlined by the fading light. She turned as he approached, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. No words were needed. Their eyes spoke of trust, admiration, and a shared understanding of the hardships they faced. Naeli stepped forward cautiously. "Samuel," she said softly, her voice barely carrying over the wind. "There is something I must tell you." Samuel dismounted, his hand brushing the reins of his horse, ready to listen. "What is it?" he asked, his tone gentle, sensing the seriousness in her expression. Naeli took a deep breath and spoke carefully. "I believe I am with child." Samuel's eyes widened in surprise. He had not expected this, and for a moment he was speechless. But then he saw the sincerity in Naeli's eyes, the courage it had taken for her to speak these words, and he understood the depth of what she had entrusted to him. He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "We will face this together," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "You are not alone." Naeli nodded, a mixture of relief and apprehension crossing her face. Together, they began to understand that their lives were about to change in ways they could not yet fully imagine. The weeks that followed were filled with a mixture of joy, fear, and preparation. Naomi's body changed gradually, and she learned to listen to its signals, adapting her daily routine to care for herself and the child she carried. Samuel took on extra work, riding farther and faster to secure supplies and ensure their safety. They spoke less of the dangers of the outside world and more about the life they wanted to build together. Nights by the fire became moments of shared dreams, hopes, and quiet laughter, even in the face of uncertainty. However, the frontier remained unforgiving. One morning, as Samuel checked the herd, he noticed signs that a group of settlers had been nearby, footprints in the dirt, broken branches, and a small trail of discarded items. Panic rose in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. He knew that any sudden action could put both him and Naomi at risk. Instead, he carefully guided the herd along a different path, making sure to stay out of sight while keeping them on track. When he returned to their meeting place that evening, Naomi's worry was evident. "Did anyone see you?" she asked, her voice tense. Samuel shook his head. "No, but we must be more careful. The world outside is not kind to people like us." Their secret meetings continued, but the awareness of danger hung over them like a shadow. They became more creative in their methods, choosing hidden valleys, dense groves, and high ridges to meet without being seen. Samuel learned to move quietly, to read the signs of other travelers, and to anticipate threats before they arrived. Naomi taught him about the hidden paths of the plains, the safe places where one could hide from view, and the ways to move silently through the wilderness. Together, they navigated the delicate balance of safety and connection. As summer waned and the days grew shorter, Samuel and Naomi faced the reality that their lives were changing. The child she carried meant that their bond could no longer remain a secret forever. They spoke often of the future, imagining a life together in a world that was uncertain but filled with possibilities. Samuel dreamed of a small homestead where they could live with their child in safety, surrounded by the beauty of the plains. Naomi imagined teaching her child the traditions of her people while also sharing the lessons she had learned from Samuel. In their hearts, they both knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but they also knew that they would face it together. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the plains. Dark clouds rolled in, heavy with rain, and the wind whipped the grass into a frenzy. Samuel and Naomi sought shelter in a small cave they had discovered months earlier. The storm raged outside, but inside the cave they found warmth and safety. Samuel held Naomi close, protecting her from the cold and the fear that threatened to rise within them. "We can survive this," he whispered. "Whatever comes, we will face it together." Naomi nodded, drawing strength from his presence. In that moment, they realized that the bond they shared was more than affection. It was a promise of protection, trust, and love that would carry them through the harshest challenges. In the weeks that followed, the settlers in the nearby towns grew restless. Rumors of Samuel's interactions with the Apache woman spread, fueled by suspicion and fear. Some settlers spoke openly of confronting him, while others whispered of the dangers he might face from those who did not tolerate a bond between the two worlds. Samuel remained cautious, avoiding the main trails and keeping their meetings hidden. Naomi, too, took precautions, staying close to her family and ensuring that their safety was never compromised. Despite the tension, there were moments of quiet joy. Samuel and Naomi would sit by the stream at dawn, watching the water ripple over the rocks, or watch the sun set behind distant hills, its colors reflected in the clouds. They spoke of names for the child, stories they would share, and the lessons they hoped to teach. Every moment together strengthened their connection, giving them hope that their lives could be more than survival. They could be filled with love, purpose, and a sense of belonging. By the end of summer, Naomi's condition became more apparent. She moved slower, rested more often, and Samuel took on more of the work in the fields and with the herd. Their partnership had transformed into a true teamwork, each supporting the other in ways that went beyond simple survival. And though fear and danger were ever present, their shared hope and determination made them stronger. They knew that the coming months would test their courage, patience, and commitment, but they also knew that they would face these challenges together. The plains stretched endlessly around them, a vast and often unforgiving world. Yet in that world, Samuel and Nayeli had carved a small space of trust, love, and shared purpose. Their bond, forged through courage, respect, and mutual care, had grown stronger with every challenge, every risk, and every quiet moment under the sky. And as they prepared for the next stage of their lives, the arrival of a child who would embody both their worlds, they knew that their story was far from over. The horizon glowed with the promise of change, and Samuel and Nayeli faced it together, their hearts united in hope, love, and the courage to overcome whatever dangers and hardships the Wild West might bring. White heavy checkmark word count. Tilde 1, 210 words. The air on the plains had grown tense. Summer was fading into early autumn, and the days were shorter, colder, and filled with a restless energy that seemed to stir the land itself. Samuel and Nayeli had been careful for weeks, avoiding the main trails, hiding from settlers' patrols, and keeping their meetings secret. But they knew that the safety they had so carefully built was fragile. Every step outside their small, hidden world carried risk, and every rustle in the wind could mean danger. One morning, Samuel rose before dawn, his horse restless under the rising sun. He had decided to check on the herd early, hoping to stay ahead of any trouble. The plains were quiet, save for the occasional call of a bird or the soft sound of grass brushing against the hooves of the cattle. As Samuel rode, he noticed something unusual, footprints in the dust, larger than a horse's, moving in the direction of the hidden valley where he and Nayeli met. His heart sank. These were not the tracks of settlers simply passing by. They were deliberate, heavy, and close together, indicating a group that might be looking for him. Samuel turned back immediately, moving as fast as he could toward the meeting place. When he arrived, he found Nayeli waiting, her expression tense and guarded. She had seen the same tracks from a high ridge nearby. "They are coming," she said, her voice quiet but urgent. "We must leave now." Samuel nodded. He understood immediately that they could not wait. If this group was hostile, both of their lives, and the life growing inside Nayeli, were at risk. Together, they gathered what they could carry and mounted their horses, moving quickly through a narrow trail that led deeper into the hills. The terrain grew rougher as they rode, rocks and loose soil threatening to throw their horses off balance. Samuel kept close to Nayeli, guiding her horse along the safest path, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. Nayeli, though frightened, stayed calm, using her knowledge of the land to choose routes that were difficult for outsiders to follow. The bond between them, already strong, became even more vital. They communicated silently through gestures, shared glances, and a deep trust born of necessity. Every decision mattered, every second counted. As the sun climbed higher, clouds began to gather. The sky turned a dull gray, promising rain and possibly storms. The wind picked up, whipping at their hair and clothes, making it harder to see or hear. Yet they pressed on, determined to reach a place of safety. Samuel's mind raced as he thought about the stakes, Nayeli, the unborn child, and the dangers of being caught. He felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever, but he also felt a strength within him, fueled by love and determination to protect the woman and life he had come to care for deeply. Hours passed, and the distant sound of voices reached them over the hills. Samuel and Nayeli paused behind a ridge, peering down at the path below. A small group of men, armed and determined, moved along the trail. Samuel's heart pounded. He knew that confrontation could be deadly. Nayeli tightened her grip on the reins, and for a moment they simply watched. Then, with a nod, they decided on a daring plan, to use the narrow canyons and dense underbrush to hide their movements and mislead the pursuers. The chase was tense and exhausting. They moved quickly yet quietly through hidden trails, slipping past streams, rocks, and fallen trees. At one point, Samuel had to dismount to help Nayeli's horse over a fallen log, his muscles straining but his focus unwavering. Nayeli, despite her condition, kept her courage strong, guiding the horse carefully and offering words of encouragement to Samuel. Every obstacle they overcame strengthened their resolve, proving not only their determination to survive, but also the power of the trust they shared. As night approached, the wind grew colder, and the shadows deepened across the plains. Samuel and Nayeli found a small cave high on a hill, concealed from the main trail. They led the horses inside and built a small fire using dry wood and kindling they had gathered along the way. The flames cast flickering light across their faces, illuminating exhaustion, worry, and yet determination. "We are safe for now," Samuel said softly, trying to steady his voice. Naomi nodded, sitting close to the warmth of the fire. "We will be," she replied, "but we must be ready for anything." The night was long and filled with tension. Outside, the sounds of the plains carried faintly. The distant call of an owl, the rustling of animals, and the occasional whisper of wind over rocks. Samuel and Naomi kept watch in shifts, never letting their guard down. Every sound made them alert, every shadow made them cautious. Yet in those quiet moments, they also found time to speak in hushed tones about the future, about the child, and about the life they hoped to build together. Their love and courage gave them strength even when the world around them seemed determined to crush their dreams. The next morning, they cautiously emerged from the cave, aware that the men pursuing them might still be nearby. Samuel scouted ahead, his sharp eyes searching for signs of danger while Naomi stayed close, alert to every sound. They moved slowly through a narrow canyon, the walls rising steeply on either side. It was difficult terrain, but Samuel and Naomi knew it was their best chance. The canyon's twists and turns made it harder for the pursuers to follow, and the cover provided by trees and rocks allowed them to remain hidden. But even with the advantage, danger was close. At one point, the group of men appeared at the far end of the canyon, their voices carrying over the rocks. Samuel and Naomi froze, hearts pounding. The men were unaware of their exact location, but they were getting closer. Samuel whispered instructions, guiding Naomi to a narrow passage behind a boulder. They crouched low, holding their breaths as the men passed by, unaware that their prey was so close. It was a moment of both fear and relief, proof of their skill, courage, and deep bond. By midday, they reached a small valley hidden from the main trails. A stream flowed quietly through the land, and the tall grass provided cover. Samuel and Naomi led their horses to the water, letting them drink and rest. They took the time to eat, to gather their strength, and to speak quietly about the events that had brought them here. "We survived because we trusted each other," Samuel said, his voice filled with both relief and admiration. Naomi smiled, her eyes reflecting the bond that had grown stronger through danger. "And because we never gave up," she replied. The next days were spent navigating the valley carefully. Samuel and Naomi knew they could not stay in one place too long, but for now, the hidden valley offered a safe space. They began to plan for the future, discussing where they might settle, how to protect their child, and the skills they could share to survive in a world that was often hostile. Their partnership was more than survival. It was teamwork, trust, and love, forged in the heat of danger and the quiet moments of understanding. Despite the relief, they remained vigilant. The frontier was unpredictable, and danger could appear at any moment. Yet Samuel and Naomi's courage had grown. They moved with purpose, planning their next steps, knowing that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The child they carried was not just a symbol of their bond, but a new beginning, a promise that even in the harshest conditions, hope could thrive. As the sun set over the hidden valley, casting long shadows over the grass and rocks, Samuel and Naomi sat by their small fire. They spoke in low voices, sharing dreams, hopes, and fears. They laughed quietly at small memories of the herd, the trails, and the unexpected dangers they had faced. And in that moment, they knew something vital. No matter what storms or challenges came their way, they were stronger together. Their love, trust, and courage were unshakable, a bond that could survive the harshness of the Wild West and any danger the world might bring. And so, as night fell and the stars sparkled above, Samuel and Naomi rested, aware of the threats still out there, yet confident in their partnership, ready to face the final challenges that lay ahead. The climax of their struggle was not just survival, but the strength of their bond, which would carry them forward into the unknown, toward the new life that awaited them both. The first light of dawn spread softly over the hidden valley, casting golden streaks across the hills and trees. Samuel and Naomi had spent the night in quiet reflection, the fire's embers slowly dying down. For the first time in weeks, they felt a small measure of relief. The dangers of the past had tested them, but now they could begin thinking about the future, about building a life together, safe from the eyes of those who sought to harm them. They had survived storms, threats, and uncertainty, and they had done so by relying on one another. That trust and the love that had grown alongside it had become their greatest strength. Naomi moved gently through the morning light, her hand resting lightly on her growing belly. The life within her was a constant reminder of the responsibility and hope they now carried. Samuel watched her from a distance, his heart swelling with pride and care. He knew that protecting her and their child would be his purpose from now on. Though he had survived the hardships of frontier life before, he realized that the stakes had never been higher. Naeli was more than his companion. She was the mother of his child, the anchor that gave his life meaning. They began their day by exploring the valley more carefully, noting the streams, the safe paths, and the spots that could provide shelter or protection if danger appeared again. Samuel marked hidden trails that would allow them to move unseen, while Naeli pointed out areas where food could be gathered, wild fruits, herbs, and roots that would help sustain them. Each discovery strengthened their hope and reinforced the sense that this valley could become a safe home, a place where their child could grow without fear. The days that followed were filled with quiet but purposeful work. Samuel repaired an old shelter near the stream, making it sturdy and secure. He built a small corral for their horse and began laying the foundation for a simple home. Naeli, meanwhile, taught him how to prepare natural remedies from the herbs and plants around them, just as her people had done for generations. She showed him how to find clean water, spot hidden dangers, and move through the land with both caution and confidence. Together, they combined their skills, blending the knowledge of the frontier with the wisdom of the Apache. Evenings became the most cherished time of the day. After the work was done, Samuel and Naeli would sit by the small fire they had kept alive, sharing stories and dreams. They spoke of the child, imagining what life would be like once it arrived. They planned the lessons they would teach, the values they wanted to instill, and the love they hoped to surround the little one with. The bond between them, already strong from shared danger, had now deepened into a quiet, steady love built on trust, respect, and hope. But life on the frontier was never without challenges. One afternoon, while Samuel was checking the boundaries of the valley, he spotted smoke rising in the distance. His heart sank. The threat of outsiders had never fully disappeared. He hurried back to Naeli, alerting her to the possibility of danger. "We must be careful," he warned. "I do not know who it is, but we cannot take chances." Naeli nodded, her face calm but determined. "We have prepared for this," she said. "We will protect ourselves and the child. We know the land, and it will help us." The smoke turned out to be a group of travelers, harmless in nature, who passed by without noticing the hidden valley. The scare, however, reminded them that vigilance would always be necessary. They strengthened their shelter, improved the hidden trails, and doubled the care with which they moved about the land. Every challenge they overcame brought them closer together, reinforcing their determination to create a life of safety and stability despite the unpredictability of the Wild West. As weeks passed, Naeli's strength and courage continued to shine. Samuel marveled at her resilience, her ability to remain calm in danger, and her steadfast commitment to the future they were building together. He knew that her bravery had been essential in keeping them alive during the most dangerous moments, and he felt a profound gratitude and love for her. Naeli, in turn, admired Samuel's steadfastness, his skill in the wilderness, and the gentle care he showed her and the life she carried. They had become true partners in every sense, sharing responsibility, protecting one another, and planning for a life that was more than survival. The months moved slowly but steadily. Autumn arrived, painting the valley in shades of red, gold, and brown. The crisp air reminded them of the passing seasons and the persistence of life even in a harsh world. Samuel continued working on their small homestead, crafting simple furniture, reinforcing their shelter, and ensuring that they had a safe place for the child to be born. Naeli prepared meals with the wild herbs and grains they had gathered, keeping their bodies nourished and healthy. Every day brought a mix of work and quiet joy, a balance that strengthened their resolve. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, Samuel and Naeli sat together by the fire, their hands intertwined. "We have come far," Samuel said quietly, "and yet this is only the beginning." Naeli smiled, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. "Yes," she replied. "But we have each other, and that is more important than anything else." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the gentle sound of the stream, the rustling of the grass, and the distant calls of animals settling for the night. It was a peaceful moment, one that felt rare and precious in a world that had been so unpredictable and dangerous. The day finally arrived when Naeli went into labor. Samuel had prepared as best he could, gathering blankets, clean water, and simple tools. He stayed by her side through the long hours, supporting her with gentle words, steady hands, and unwavering presence. Naeli endured the pain with courage, her strength remarkable as she brought their child into the world. When the cries of the newborn filled the small shelter, both Samuel and Naeli felt a wave of relief, joy, and wonder. Their child, a symbol of hope, love, and the future, was finally in their arms. In the days that followed, Samuel and Naeli adapted to their new roles as parents. The challenges were many: feeding the child, protecting them from dangers, and adjusting to the realities of frontier life. But they faced each day with patience, teamwork, and love. The valley became a true home, filled not only with survival skills and careful planning, but also with laughter, stories, and the quiet satisfaction of building a life together. Their child grew under the protective eyes of parents who had faced danger, hardship, and uncertainty, but who had also learned the importance of trust, courage, and love. Over time, the hidden valley became a place of peace. Samuel and Naeli planted a small garden, improved their shelter, and created a life that was self-sufficient and secure. The world beyond the valley remained unpredictable, but within their small home, there was stability, safety, and happiness. Their love had endured trials that would have broken many, and now it had transformed into a life filled with purpose, hope, and connection. The child, a blend of both their worlds, grew surrounded by the knowledge and traditions of both parents. Samuel taught the basics of the frontier, the care of animals, the importance of observation, and respect for the land. Naeli shared the wisdom of her people, the lessons of survival, and the values of courage, patience, and respect for all living things. Together, they ensured that the child understood both worlds, a bridge between the cultures and lessons that shaped them. Years later, when Samuel and Naeli looked back on their journey, from the first cautious meeting by the ravine, through the dangers and challenges of the plains, to the birth and growth of their child, they knew that their lives had been changed forever. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and prejudice, yet they had emerged stronger, united by love, trust, and shared purpose. Their story was not just one of survival. It was a story of hope, courage, and the power of partnership in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. The plains stretched endlessly around them, but Samuel, Naeli, and their child had found a home within it. A home built on respect, trust, and love. A life shaped by courage, hard work, and hope. And though the frontier continued to hold dangers beyond the valley, they knew that together, they could face anything. The legacy of their journey, their love, their courage, and the life they had brought into the world, would endure, a testament to the strength of the human spirit even in the most challenging of times. And so, under the wide, open sky, with the sun setting in brilliant colors and the wind whispering through the grass, Samuel and Naeli held each other close. Their child slept safely nearby, and for the first time the Wild West seemed less a place of danger and uncertainty, and more a place where hope, love, and family could flourish. They had chosen each other, faced the challenges together, and built a life that no threat, no storm, and no harshness could take away. Their story, born in struggle and sealed in trust, had found its peaceful conclusion, not an ending, but the beginning of a new life filled with promise.